Welcome back to That Dad Guy. It's March the 29th, 2023, and today I'm going to try something a little bit different. It does involve a stamp, but just briefly. It's going to be about history. I went to university and studied history. I love historical things, and I love finding out new things about people. I've recently finished watching a Netflix program about Lydia Poet, who was the first female Italian lawyer, and a bit about her struggle being a lawyer and being disbarred and being the catalyst to a whole movement of future female lawyers in Italy. And it got me thinking, you know, there are lots of characters, there are lots of people in Canadian history that have done great things. And I'm sure there's tons of them that I don't know. So maybe if I do a little research and then I share that information, maybe some of these people you didn't know about either. And it would be a great way to spread some Canadian history, one. Two, put a face to a postage stamp and give you a little history behind it. And yeah, if it's just me learning things, that's great. If one other person watches these videos and enjoys it, that's great too. And we'll see. Maybe I will start doing a whole other series about famous Canadians. And I don't mean famous in a celebrity style like Jim Carrey or Justin Bieber or Drake or Alan Thicke or Mike Myers, or there's a whole list of Canadians that are out there that are famous as actors or comedians or musicians, and people know their names, Celine Dion, but some of the faces that should really have that recognition. And I mean, this person got recognition. They got a stamp. There's a statue out there. There's plaques out there. Historically, they've made a difference and have been recognized. But in my eyes, I didn't know who they were. So it's time to get to learn someone. So have you heard of the famous five? I hadn't. And I'm going to talk about one of those famous five right now. I'm going to put up this picture of a stamp. It came out in 1981. This is Henrietta Edwards. She was born Henrietta Muir in 1849 in Montreal. She is one of the famous five, and her life has been a part, or her life was a part of getting women's rights. She was a feminist, part of the suffragette movement. She was born Henrietta Louise Muir, and to a family who was upper middle class in Montreal. The Muir family was also known for creating the First Baptist Church in Montreal. Her grandparents, in his will, his grandfather in his will, he had stipulated that when his estate gets divided up, it would get divided up equally among his children, no matter if they were male or female. So she had all sorts of guiding family members that would support equality with men and women. Her parents' will, her father put in the will that his spouse, upon his passing, would have rights, and it was established that way. And Henrietta did that as well into her marriage when she got married to Mr. Edwards, who was a physician and became a government physician to the Indigenous people. Early on, Henrietta wanted to be an artist, but because she was a woman, she wasn't allowed to go to art school, so her parents paid for private tutoring, and she went to New York City and learned art there. Her and her sister also got to I'm going to flip a few screens that I have here in the back, so I don't make sure I don't get things incorrect here. I want to make sure I do it justice as best as I can. So in 1874, she was born in 1849. In 1874, Henrietta and her sister talked to her father about renting a house in Montreal, and they used that house to help young women learn to read, gather information, give themselves the best life that they possibly could have. They worked with a organization called the Working Girls Association, which became later known as the Working Women's Association. Now, sometimes now we talk about working women and working girls, we think of them as it's kind of in the English language, you use that as a term for prostitution. Back in this day, it just meant that the women were working, which they weren't always allowed to do in the past too. So this organization house that they got up and running in Canada, in Montreal, was really a stepping stone for these women to better themselves. Now, Henrietta, nowadays, and probably always, kids say, oh, I don't want to go to school, don't really want to go to school, but Henrietta wanted to go to school. She, not only did she go to a public school, but she was also homeschooled. She got a really good education, and she used that throughout her career to try to make it better for other people too. Not only did she have her art, in 1876, like I said before, she married Dr. Oliver Edwards. They moved to what is now Saskatchewan, kind of the northern region, Northwest Territories, to work with an Indigenous group there. In 1878, her and her sister launched the Women's Work in Canada, which was a monthly publication considered to be the first Canadian magazine for working women. This publication was unique because it employed only women. It trained them to print, it trained them in publications, in editing, and so it really gave women a voice at an early stage on 1878. Then the Edwards family, Henrietta and her wife, or her husband Oliver, and their 3 children, they left northern Saskatchewan. They had to return to Ottawa because he fell ill. So while Henrietta was in Ottawa, she started studying law a little bit more and how the law pertained to women and children, not explicitly, but that was her main focus. After a time there, her and her husband and family, they moved to Alberta. And while in Alberta, Henrietta really became part of a movement to help women in, sorry, I'm trying to find the right tab here. I got another tab open. Sorry. Use my Canadian there. I wanted to try to get it pronounced properly. She was one of the ones that instigated the Dower Act in Alberta. And what the Dower Act entailed, basically, it was to protect the spouse. If a couple's home was solely owned by the spouse, so the husband owned the house, because most of the time the husbands were the property owners, if he should pass away, that house normally either got sold or got given to another family member, another male family member. So the Dower Act protected the spouse in the fact that she got claim to that house, or if the husband or ex-husband decided that he wanted to sell the house, the non-owner had rights in that case. So that was a huge thing that she got accomplished back then. Now, the next thing that she kind of was going towards was the right for women to vote. So at the time of her life, in the early stages, women did not have the right to vote. It wasn't until the First World War that things started to change. In 1916, women who were nurses got the right to vote. In 1917, I believe, if a woman's spouse was off fighting in the war, she had the right to vote in his absence. And then in 1919, federally, women, not all women, but women generally got the right to vote. I say not all women because there was discrimination against the Aboriginal people. And that lasted all the way up until 1960 as far as voting, problems with voting. You can get into lots of details, and that goes into a lot more too. You know, Chinese Canadians, Japanese Canadians, all of them also didn't have the right to vote because during wartime and all sorts of other things, there was a discrimination against them. So we're talking about generally white women were given the right to vote in 1919, and that wasn't, they couldn't all vote provincially though at that stage either. So Manitoba in 1918 said, yes, you have the right to vote. The Western provinces followed suit. I believe 1918, Nova Scotia, they got the right to vote. 1919, New Brunswick, they got the right to vote. Prince Edward Island followed a couple years later. There was Quebec wasn't until 1940 that women got the right to vote provincially. So there were still battles to be fought. Now, I started this whole discussion talking about the famous five because there were 5 women that came together. They all fought for the right to vote, but they all fought for the word persons. So there was a British North American Act, which is basically the Constitution, before we had a Constitution, because we were still under the British Empire, their rule. And the term persons was changed from man, but who was defined as a person was still a man, and that got fought up the court by the famous 5. And over and over again, it got shot down and said, no, a woman isn't a person. And it wasn't until 1928 when they finally said, yes, a person is not only a man, but a woman. And so they have the right to hold office in the Senate. So not only have they gained the right to vote, but now they have the right to hold legal office. They can be a member of parliament, legislature, and can be a senator. And in the future, not right away, because Henrietta passed away before this happened, but the famous 5 got honorary membership as the first senators, so first female senator. Even though they were never appointed as senators, there's plaques that are dedicated to them. There's a statue in Ottawa as well for these 5 women and their accomplishments. And so yeah, so Henrietta Edwards is a name that I didn't know yesterday. That's where we're going with this, that yesterday, she's been famous for a while. She's had honoraries. She's had a stamp done up. But it took a little bit of research for me to figure out who she was. And that's just because I saw her image on a stamp. I Googled it. I delved in a little bit further. And I know I can delve a lot more. That this is only touching on some of the major accomplishments that she's done. She had a hand in creating the Victorian Order of Nurses in Canada. She was also instrumental in the starting of the YWCA, the Young Women's Community Association, I believe is what it stands for. So yeah, she's done a lot of things. She's written books. She's so many accomplishments. She may have some downsides to her too. I've read some things in the background. I don't want to put today's judgments and morals and where we are on a person that lived 100 years ago. Times were different then, and we can't overlap that stuff. What I do want to do is focus on the good that she did accomplish as a Canadian woman and how it helped this country and helped other countries, because she took her fight to the highest court in the British Empire at the time, excuse me, because Canada didn't have a constitution. We didn't get constitution until 1981. And so, yeah, she was taking not only a fight of women, of Canadian women, but to British women. And so she made a huge impact, and I wanted to focus on that. So I hope you enjoyed it. I've enjoyed studying it, doing some research on it. It's also given me a whole bunch of other names of other people that I want to focus on. I'm not saying necessarily that my next video is going to be another one about the famous 5, but it could be, or could be one of many down the road. But I do want to make sure that I'm focusing on famous Canadians that aren't well known, or at least well known to me. So I'm going to learn something, and if I can teach you something along the way, that's great too. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. And if you did, I really would like you to subscribe, like, and leave me a comment. Let me know if you knew anything about Henrietta Edwards before. If maybe there's something that I missed that I should have talked about her life. You can leave a comment on that as well. And if you have suggestions maybe of other women you think, or not women necessarily, just other Canadians that you think I should look into, you could leave those comments. Or if you just want to be surprised by what I find and what comes in the future. I just want to know whether or not you like it or you don't like this style of video. It is something I'm working on. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being a part of this community and watching all the different things that I tend to put out. Have a magical week. What follow? You say. like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends.
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?